This is a story I wrote in 2018 about a convoy resupply run we had done. At the time, I was going through symptoms of PTSD and was told to write. I wrote a lot of stories like this, and if you guys like them, subscribe and I'll share some more. This story takes place in Marjeh, Afghanistan in 2010 in a FOB called Camp Hansen, which we had built. We were some of the first boots on the ground in Marjeh. There were no bases or supply lines when we landed in our helos. There was heavy fighting for the first few weeks. This story is several months after the invasion. I hope you enjoy it. We were in our heavily armored MATVs, sitting in a line in front of the engineer area. That was our home, a walled-off compound inside of a larger base. All of our equipment was here, along with our platoon headquarters. We were the only unit that had the luxury of piss tubes in this part of the camp. We also sported a homemade poker table and blackjack table, living in style in the middle of the arid Afghan desert. In a few minutes we would leave the relative safety of Camp Hansen and venture out into the city, then beyond to Camp Bastion. Camp Bastion was one of the largest bases in Helmand Province, a gigantic walled fortress. Our mission was to resupply our lumber pile and other essential gear us engineers used. It would be a 10-hour rough and most likely boring mission. We should have been on our way an hour ago, but a common problem was holding us back: comms. It is important. Being able to communicate in battle is vital to winning an engagement. The sophisticated but complicated comm system we use were always suffering problems. Us gunners had the standard black handheld Motorola's too. We kept them with us in our turrets. They weren't encrypted, but we could use them to call out targets quickly, or we used them to bullshit and pass insulting messages to other members of each respective vehicle. Marine talk. We had 6 vehicles in the convoy. 4 MATVs and 2 7-tons. The MATVs are large, powerful, and fast, but lack much extra room to stretch out or store anything. They are well armored with a V-shaped hole to direct blasts from mines and IEDs away from the vehicle. 7-tons were like semis, only they sat really high off the ground, making them fairly survivable in a blast. The convoy would start with 2 MATVs, then the 2 7-tons, followed by the other 2 MATVs. My best friend Brett was always the front gunner, manning the only Mod Deuce that we had. It's a Browning 50 cal heavy machine gun and has been around since World War II. A beast of a gun, always up front to deal with oncoming traffic. The rest of the MATVs had 240 Bravo machine guns. They fired 7.62 and could fill about anything full of holes pretty efficiently. 2 7-tons were sporting a couple saws. Each engineer squad had a M249 saw. We only had 3 240s that were functioning, so we had to settle. I was always the rear gunner, manning my 240 Bravo. I protected the rear of the convoy. Finally, the comm guys found the issue, and it was time to go. The convoy rolled up to the ECP, stopped, and requested permission from headquarters to leave the FOB. Permission was granted. Our platoon commander's voice came over the radio. Engineers were Oscar Mike. The gate guard moved the concertina wire out of the road. The trucks roared to life. We began our zigzag out of the barriers, turning right onto the hard-packed clay road. Brett and I had a tradition. Every time we left the wire, Brett would say over his radio, "Party like a rock star." Then as my vehicle passed the ECP, I would reply and blink like a porn star. We had never been blown up before, and for some reason we credited it to saying our traditional words when leaving the protection of the wire. More Marine logic for you. We made the right turn and sped up fast. The plan was to push hard to Bastion, resupply, then turn right around and head home. It would be a long day, but it was doable if we didn't run into problems. For the next hour we rolled through little villages and bazaars. They all belonged to the city of Marjeh, but were spread out. There would be a group of homes separated by fields of poppy. We drove by the fields where we had landed in the helos in the middle of the night just 3 months prior, dodging kids as they played in the road, throwing them really the only thing we had to spare, water. They were grateful nonetheless. The ladies we would pass were covered from head to toe in their burqas, every single one of them. The only skin showing on them was their hands. This comes as nothing less than a cultural shock. You never get used to it. The only time we saw a female that wasn't covered from head to toe were pictures or the occasional supply convoy that would come through. After 2.5 hours, we made it to the outskirts of town. It is a shocking sight. See, Marjeh is situated in the Helmand River Valley, a relatively lush area irrigated by an ancient canal system. It is also very flat. There's almost no discernible change in elevation while you're in the valley. But here, green instantly turns to coarse, brown sand. Gigantic dunes rise up, right next to homes, gaining in elevation the further in you go. A lot like the Rockies, only dull and hot, maybe like 70 feet tall. There are vehicle tracks that run off in every direction with no plan or reason. They crisscross in random directions, moving off into the horizon. We drove out into the desert for half an hour before turning and running parallel to the river valley. The only thing in view was a dry, ancient land, sand from horizon to horizon. The perk to this area was that you could haul ass. We drove as fast as we could, which was about 55 miles an hour. The MAP Vs could do 70 to 75, but the 7 tons ran 55 flat. 20 minutes into our new course, a herd of wild camels appeared, hundreds of them in every shape and size, walking along lazily on top of giant sand dunes with their heads bobbing with each step. As we passed them, I thought about how unreal this place was. Driving over a large dune, I could see a tower of sand appearing, a gigantic tornado-sized dust devil under a clear blue sky. Being from Oklahoma, I am used to seeing the occasional tornado. Nothing like this, though. These were enormous, at least an eighth mile wide at the base, roping up into the sky for hundreds of feet, a beige light brown column of dust. Then another appeared on the horizon, and another, then one more. It was insane. In a line moving parallel to us in the opposite direction, no more than a mile away. Never would I have thought that I would see 4 gigantic dust devils vacuuming up the desert floor. The camels didn't seem to mind, and went on with their business, kind of like a lot of people I know in Oklahoma, sitting on the back porch with a beer and watching a tornado pass by. Just another day in Afghanistan. Maybe 30 minutes later, Camp Bastion started to rise up out of the sand. We pulled in, passing hundreds of vehicles, all here to load up and head back out to where they came from. Finally linking up with 2nd Combat Engineer Battalion to get our supplies. We started loading the 7 tons as quickly as we could. We had another mission in mind, chow. Finishing up loading, we headed off to get in line at the chow hall. The chow hall was a huge tent that employed civilian contractors from countries in Southeast Asia. These types of missions were planned around making sure we arrived when the chow hall would be serving chow. It was like a vacation compared to eating MREs every single day for months. We were so dirty. Us gunners had solid white faces, except for where our goggles had been. The camis that we wore were drenched in sweat and mixed with dirt from the road, making us look like someone dumped a bag of light brown flour on us. Generally, some high-ranking officer would give us a rough time about it if he caught us in the chow line looking like that. We ate the delicacies and laughed and poked fun at the fobbits that never left the security of the wire. They would always stare because we looked ragged and dirty, while their uniforms were clean and looked like they had just showered. We didn't care though, it was totally worth the looks. We finished eating without incident. What a surprise. Jumped back in our Vicks and headed back toward Marjeh, riding off into the sunset, winding our way through the desert, back the way we had come, making it home without trouble and completing our mission. Let me know in the comments if you had any good stories from your time in the service. Also, let me know what your thoughts are on my story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.